I'm Yvette Dore. I'm Communications Director of Digital Radio UK, and I'm joined today by Ian O'Neill, who is Head of Radio at the UK Government's Department of Digital Culture, Media and Sport, and we're here for the WorldDAB General Assembly UK update. Hello, Ian.
Hello, Yvette, and hello to everyone at the WorldDAB General Assembly. I'm really delighted to have the opportunity to speak to you all today and to give you a chance to update you on what's happening to the UK.
Yes, we've just seen some great scenes of central London on our little intro film, but that's not where we are today. I'm speaking to you from my home in southeast London, and Ian, where are you today?
I'm at home in North London, so the other side of the river.
Thank you. So over the next few minutes, I'm going to update you on what's happening in the UK from a general digital radio progress perspective, and then I'll hand over to Ian, who, as he says, will update on some specific government initiatives, including the progress of the UK's digital radio and audio review. So before we get into the detail of that, like all discussions of 2020, the first thing to acknowledge is the impact of COVID-19, of course. Like virtually all of you watching today, we are currently living under measures in the UK that the government has introduced in efforts to control and contain the virus, and these include local restrictions and the rule of 6. The UK government advice is currently to work at home if you can, hence Ian and I being where we are. The virus has caused huge disruptions to everyone's day-to-day lives, which has impacted how we are consuming radio and all media, and also how we're operating as the radio industry. From an industry perspective, COVID has impacted advertising revenues and it's disrupted broadcasters' operations. From a listener perspective, it's impacted where and how people are listening, with, for example, listening in car decreasing dramatically early in the pandemic and listening in home increasing. But one thing that the pandemic has shown is the value of radio and the vital role it plays as a trusted medium, keeping us informed, entertained and connected. We anticipate restrictions and challenges will continue for a good few months yet, but we think things are starting to settle and return to more usual levels and patterns in terms of advertising and listening. We don't actually have the insights we usually have into current listening patterns, however, as our industry measurement survey in the UK, RADAR, uses elements of face-to-face methodology and is currently suspended. We do have some top-line insights, and they confirm that overall listening hours and reach remained robust despite the disruption. So the last digital listening result that we have is actually from Q1 2020. At that time, digital listening had increased to 58.6% of all listening, and 70% of that was DAB, and about 20% of that was online. The key sources of digital listening growth in the UK has been DAB in cars, driven by new cars with DAB as standard, the growth of online listening in home, which has been prompted by smart speakers, and also digital listening to national commercial stations through the launch of new stations, most of them on DAB+. The commercial radio sector has continued to expand with new station launches even through COVID, and there are now 54 national stations in DAB or DAB+, with the newest, Capital Dance, launching as recently as early October. Ian, can you tell us a little about the initiatives that the government has been working on to support the industry through the pandemic?
Yes, certainly. It's been a very busy time for radio, for BBC, for commercial radio and community radio. The need and importance of radio has been shown to be very high during the COVID-19 epidemic, and all parts of the radio industry in the UK have stepped up. There have been 3 specific initiatives that have helped the radio industry. Firstly, Ofcom moved very early and very effectively to relax some of the regulatory requirements regarding local radio and local radio production. That was to enable stations to be able to broadcast more effectively, given that the access to studios was severely limited, and to facilitate arrangements for presenters to present from home. The second thing, which was something that we did, was we worked very closely with Arqiva, the transmission network operator, to agree a package of rebates and transmission fees across the industry, with a particular focus on smaller commercial radio stations. And thirdly, we repurposed the Community Radio Fund in the UK. This is a £400,000 a year fund for community radio, to use that as funding for emergency support for stations that were having problems with their advertising revenues.
Yeah, so obviously a very busy time for government during the crisis. But I know that despite that, there's been significant progress in some key areas for radio. So let's talk about those for a little bit. Over the last 10 years in the UK, the availability of DAB in new cars has been transformed, with the percentage of new cars with DAB fitted as standard increasing from 4% in 2010 to 94% in 2020. But in recent weeks, the UK government has brought in a new requirement, which will see that increase to virtually 100%. Ian, can you tell us a little bit about that, and also other key initiatives that the government has pushed on with?
Yes, like other EU states, as of 1st of September this year, regulation was passed into law to mandate for the fitment of terrestrial digital radio for all car radios in passenger cars. This means that by 2021, all new cars sold in the UK with a radio will have DAB fitted as standard. The legislation doesn't cover commercial vehicles, but currently around 80% have fitted with DAB. That's been a significant progress. And so the issue of mandates for commercial vehicles is something we'll keep under review. But we have been able to push on with other areas. We have brought about some major changes in terms of extending commercial radio licenses, which we're just about to complete that through Parliament. And on the licensing of small-scale DAB, which was something that we had funded through the trials, which were led by Ofcom, the Ofcom has now started the process for the licensing of these mini multiplexes, to provide a route for hundreds of ultra-local commercial and new community stations, and the opportunity to broadcast both on DAB and DAB+ alongside major national stations. The final area where we've made some progress is on the digital radio and audio review. The terms of reference were announced in February, so just before the start of the COVID lockdown. This is a joint government and industry-led project, which is chaired by DCMS, which brings together the radio industry and stakeholders, and its aim is to ensure and set plans for a vibrant and healthy long-term future for UK radio. It was set up in the aftermath of the UK reaching 50% of digital listening, but it isn't focused around the decision on a digital radio switchover. It's more about assessing radio's future in the wider audio market and making sure that UK radio and content continues to thrive in the future. And this is really important because of the growing competition from new and evolving forms of audio and platforms.
So what kind of areas will the review be focusing on?
Well, the review will look at essentially three areas. Firstly, it will look at listeners, where they will be in the future, how their patterns of consumption are changing given the increased demand from streaming services and online services. It's looking then at devices, what sort of devices they'll be looking on and what sort of content will they be consuming. And we've done some work already to model those future scenarios and take into account some of those changes. The second area is on devices themselves and on technology, and the technology in cars and vehicles. For example, smart speakers are now establishing themselves. They've made progress in both the United States and in Australia, and they're taking root and growing as audio devices in the UK. And we need to understand what this means for the future of radio. The final area for the review is to look at the future position of radio platforms. In the UK, we have a number of radio platforms, and we need to work with the radio industry on where it should invest in terms of the speed and timing of the retirement of medium wave and then possibly FM in the future, and whether and how long to continue to invest in FM, and where and when to be building out further DAB if that's where the radio industry needs and wants to go to. So there's quite a lot within the review. And we're working, as I said, with a number of radio organisations as part of this. We're also working with Ofcom, who, although not formally part of the review, will be providing a report to us on the state of coverage and broadcast networks, which will be the basis for future consideration on distribution. But the review, as well as looking at voice-activated speaker devices for the first time in detail, the review will also be looking at issues like environmental costs. So in looking at the future needs of the network, it's one of the things that we will have to sort of plan what is the most effective long-term situation to maintain robust and healthy broadcast networks, whilst contributing towards the UK's push to zero net carbon.
Ian, I think that's a great note to end on. Thank you to Bernie and Patrick and the team at WorldDAB for the opportunity to have us talk today. Hopefully we'll see each other in person at the General Assembly next year, and take care to everyone in the meantime. And Ian?
Yes, and to everyone there, do stay safe and enjoy the rest of the event. And thank you to Patrick and Bernie for the invitation to speak to you all today.
Thank you. Thanks, Ian.